Welcome to Polysaccharide Carbohydrates. More specifically, we're going to be looking at their digestion and absorption process. First off, we're going to be looking at the digestion process, and we're going to need a food that contains a lot of carbohydrates such as starch and glycogen, and a perfect example of that is bread, which is loaded with carbs. So our first stop is the mouth where the carbohydrate digestion begins. Almost immediately, the salivary glands in the mouth begin to secrete saliva, and this helps to moisten the food. The food is then chewed while the salivary glands begin to release the enzyme known as amylase. The release of the enzyme salivary amylase begins the process of breaking down the polysaccharides in the carbohydrate food. Alright, so after the carbohydrate food is chewed into smaller pieces and mixed with salivary amylase along with other salivary juices, it is then swallowed and passed through the esophagus. So this takes us to our next stop, which is the stomach. And that mixture that just passed through the esophagus enters the stomach where it is known as chyme. There is no further digestion of chyme, as the stomach produces acid which destroys bacteria in the food and stops the action of the salivary amylase. After its stay in the stomach, the chyme enters the beginning portion of the small intestines, or as we all know as the duodenum. In response to the chyme being in the duodenum, the pancreas then releases the enzyme pancreatic amylase, which goes on to break down the polysaccharide we have into a disaccharide. Just as a quick little recap, polysaccharides are long chains of thousands of glucose molecules, while disaccharides are a chain of only two sugars that are linked together. Okay, so getting back to the process. After the polysaccharide is broken down into a disaccharide, the small intestine goes on to produce enzymes called lactase, sucrase, and maltase, which break down the disaccharides even further into monosaccharides. And the monosaccharides, which are single sugars, are then absorbed in the small intestines.
But wait, what happens to the carbohydrates that were not digested and absorbed by the small intestine?
Ha ha ha. Good question. Carbohydrates that were not digested and absorbed by the small intestine reach the colon where they are partly broken down by intestinal bacteria. Also, fiber, which cannot be digested like other carbohydrates, is excreted with feces or partly digested by the intestinal bacteria. That's all the time I have, and now I'm going to pass that along to my colleague who will explain to you guys about absorption.
Thanks, and welcome everybody to the process of absorption. Looking back, we can see that the end products of digestion are glucose, fructose, and galactose. So, these end products are then absorbed through the intestinal mucosal cells and then into the bloodstream. However, the main factors that are responsible for the absorption of these sugars are facilitated transport along with active transport. So, facilitated transport depends on the concentration of sugars across the intestinal lumen and mucosal cells. Also, all the monosaccharides, to some extent, are absorbed by facilitated diffusion. For active transport, glucose and galactose are transported along the border of mucosal cells through active transport. This process is known as an energy requiring process, which needs protein as well as the presence of sodium ions. And then the sodium dependent glucose transporter binds both glucose and sodium at separate sites and transports them into the cell. And we can see that the sodium transports down concentrated gradient, while glucose transports against concentrated gradient. And this process is called co-transport or symport.
Okay, I get all that, but one more time. Where exactly does absorption take place?
Good question. Let me make it clear that absorption takes place in the upper portion of your small intestine, where a digestive organ includes small structures called villi and microvilli. And these structures are very similar to the outward projections in a carpet or rug. These hair-like projections, villi and microvilli, line the cells in this part of your gut and greatly increase the surface area available for carbohydrate absorption. And with this absorption, it allows digested carbohydrates to enter your bloodstream so you can use all this energy.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the process of digestion and absorption for polysaccharide carbohydrates.